Hi, this is Inky35, and today I thought I'd make this video to discuss some of the things that I've been seeing around on YouTube. Um, so I'm going to put this in my thoughts, and I am going to discuss these videos that people are making on Saturn L and the problem that there are with the things that these people are saying. First of all, if you look at any of these videos, and they all say that it has something to do with the Illuminati and all this other stuff. But anyway, if you look at what they're saying, for instance, they're saying that Saturn is L, and that it has to do with the God of the Israelites, and that the Israelites worshipped Saturn, and that Saturn is Moloch, and all this other stuff. So I just wanted to discuss this to explain why what they're saying is incorrect. They believe that they have found this answer, and you know, it's not just Saturn. People are looking at Venus as well, and they're looking at these planets as if this is what God was worshiping. And the thing that I find that's most fascinating about all of this is that they believe that all these gods are just one God. So I was watching this video earlier, and I listened to what I was saying. It was obviously somebody, you know, taking quotes from different authors and all this other stuff. But so this is the problem. Saturn L, they're relating him to El of the Canaanite Phoenicians, and they are saying that the Israelites worshipped this god. Now, this is what happened. There were kings over the land, and let's start from David. Even though people say, oh, you can't find David, or they call, you know, they say all this stuff. King David, who is the father of Solomon, was the king over the kingdom of Judah. Now, you had Judah and Benjamin, which were from Rachel, which was the beloved of Jacob. Now, Jacob had several children, and before he was called Israel, they were Hebrews, and there were different tribes. So these different tribes come from different mothers, and they come from their father, the same father, but different mothers and different lineages. And so they ended up coming across the lands. Everybody knows the story, going through Moses and all that stuff. So they end up in Canaan, and these are the 12 tribes that end up over there. And they go into the land of Canaan. And when Solomon had died, and Solomon had committed sins to the Lord and had set up abominations in the temple of the Lord. Now, this is something that people need to think about, is that Solomon had disobeyed the Lord and worshiped other gods. And it says this in the book of Kings. And it also talks about how his son Rehoboam had taken over his father's kingdom when his father passed. So Rehoboam wasn't righteous. Rehoboam was a wicked king over Judah. And so after Solomon passed, Jeroboam ended up asking Rehoboam, and I've talked about this. This is 1 Kings 12. And it talks about what happened to the children of Israel. And I'm not talking about the tribes of Judah. I'm talking about the 10 northern tribes of Israel, that were up in the land of Samaria. And that's what there was, the north and the south. So the 10 northern tribes lived up in Samaria, all the way up through Canaan, all the way into Samaria, all the way up in Syria, and all those places, Sidon, and all around that area. And what happened is that because Rehoboam, and I put this out in one of my videos on a walk with the gods through history, where I'm actually talking about who El is, and I'm explaining in there why the God of the Hebrews is not El, and why he is not Baal. Okay, now I'm saying this again because people, for some reason, do not understand whether they believe it's real or they don't believe it's real. They don't understand the context of what is being stated in the Bible. And so when Jeroboam was under the thumb of Rehoboam, which is the king of Judah, he ends up setting himself up. This is where you get the division of the kingdoms of Israel. So Jeroboam ends up being elected king over the Israelites because Rehoboam had put a corvée upon the people and was going to be worse than his father was upon Israel. And so Jeroboam ends up becoming, and this kingdom split. So some people say that David is the house of divide, the house of division, because I guess the kingdom split, but that was it during the time of Rehoboam, not the time of David, the house of David. But anyway, the kingdom split into two parts, and the 10 northern tribes were under the king Jehoram, or Jehoram, or Jeroboam. And so what Jeroboam did is he ended up getting influenced by the surrounding city-states that were around there that were worshiping El, and were worshiping Yahweh, and were worshiping Asherah and Baal, okay, which only means Lord. That's all the word Baal means, is Lord. So there were different lords. There were several lords in this area. So they were worshiping these gods, not just one, several gods in that area. And they had set up calves, golden calves. So when you see somebody talking about Saturn, El, and they're talking about Cronus and all this other stuff and trying to link it together with the Greeks, with the Canaanite Phoenicians, and then, you know, with Babylon and all this other stuff, one has to realize that there are discrepancies in the Greek mythology. The Greek mythology, although some may match with certain gods, their gods are not the same, as a pun, chronology as the other gods of the earlier ancient tales. Although they knew of these tales and tried to incorporate their gods as the ones, but those tales do not match. Only certain similarities are there with the ancient tales, but not all the tales are the same. So the god El over the land of Canaan, and I will find people saying, oh, the Canaanite Phoenician language. And this is what I find really interesting with when someone says that the Hebrews took from the Canaanites language and all this stuff, yet when they're saying Canaanite Phoenician, it's as if they're saying like they're two different people or something, or they're all different people, the Hebrews, Canaanites, and the the Phoenicians as if they're all different people. They aren't different people. They're the exact same people. They're Semitic. The Canaanites later on were called the Phoenician people because that's what the Greeks named them, the Phoenicians, but they were the Canaanites. So they're the same people. The reason why they spoke the same dialect, it wasn't that the Hebrews stole the dialect from them. The Semitic language has existed for thousands of years. They may have written their own type of alphabet later on, but that didn't mean that because the Hebrews spoke the same dialect that that they were stealing something from the Canaanite people. Because people have to remember that in the tale of Noah, that it's speaking about Canaan was cursed, okay? And Canaan doesn't mean Cain, like from the seed of Cain. Canaan was the son of Ham. And it states in the Bible that he was supposed to have been cursed. Well, why was Canaan supposed to have been cursed? Because it says that Ham, his father, had looked upon Noah's nakedness. Ham is one of Noah's sons. And so you'll hear stories like in the Christian tale, and I'm just getting around to this so you can see where I'm going with this real quick. In the Christian tales, you'll see, they think that Ham actually had sex with his father because he looked upon his nakedness. That's not what this means. When Ham uncovered his father's nakedness, and it says that his brothers walked out backwards, so they, didn't look at, they walked in, and then they walk out backwards. It didn't mean that he was laying with his father. It meant that he laid with his wife. That doesn't mean he laid with his mother. It means that he laid with his wife. But the reason why they think that he lay with his father is because they couldn't think they can't think of him actually having other women because of the fact that the Christians believe that Noah only had 8 people on the ark. Well, that's not the original story anyway, okay? But this is what they believe. So all this confusion has come into these stories to where there isn't an understanding of what's going on here. So the Canaanites, Noah cursed Ham, son Canaan. He didn't directly curse Ham. God didn't curse Canaan. Noah cursed Canaan. And the reason why Noah cursed Canaan was because Ham ended up having sex with his wife. And obviously, this means the uncovering of the nakedness means he had sex with his wife and that she ended up becoming pregnant with Canaan. So this is why the land of Canaan was cursed. So the land of Canaan spread out. And this is all before Abraham, so everybody can just get the picture in their head that they were told by God to go over to the land of Canaan. They are the same peoples, except they had different tribes. And so what happened is supposedly after they had left Egypt, they had wandered, and then they ended up going over into those lands. So to get back to what I was saying, the Israelites ended up worshiping, the 10 northern tribes ended up worshiping Baal, El, Yahweh, Asherah, which has to do with Enlil and Inanna. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, because people are all over the place telling people that Saturn is the god of the Bible. That Saturn is the god of the Hebrews. Now, the problem here is that, yes, the Israelites had worshipped Moloch, and they had worshipped Baal. And they believe that all of these gods are the same God, because in that way that they're looking at it, then they're looking at it with the monotheistic view, even though they're saying that they aren't religious, yet they're still looking at it with a monotheistic view when it's a polytheistic view, because there are many gods, and then they'll turn around and say that it's the same God. So in this instance, if they're saying that El and Moloch and Saturn are all the same God, And then they're saying that it's Satan, that the God of the Old Testament is Satan. And then they'll jump over and they'll say, but Jesus is the way, and they'll use the New Testament and they'll start saying that Jesus is the way. But yet they aren't even recognizing several things. They aren't recognizing that Jesus is supposed to be the Son of God of the Old Testament, the one who wrote the Ten Commandments. And for some reason now, we know why they're trying to get away from it, but how does that change the fact that Jesus is supposed to be the son of the Old Testament, which they're all saying is Satan? Everybody's saying the God of the Old Testament is Satan because the Israelites worshiped Moloch, and they found out that El, which is a general term meaning God, does not mean a specific God. It means mighty, strength, but it doesn't mean that it is the same God. Okay, yes, the Israelites did worship El, and they worshiped Yahweh and Asherah. It has been stated over and over in the Bible that they did this. And what isn't being recognized is that it states in the Bible in chapter, you can look at Kings chapter 1 verse 12, you can look all through Leviticus, you can look at the whole Bible. Every time over and over it talks about how they were worshiping planets and the stars and the sun and the moon, and that it was an abomination to the God of the Hebrews, of the Israelites. Yet the Israelites did worship those beings and did worship the stars in the heavenly host. And it specifically says, you shall not do that. So they continued to worship, and this is what it says, and that God said he was going to bring in the Bible, this is what it says, that he's going to bring in the Assyrians, and he is going to destroy Israel and take them from his sight. I have made a video on this as well called The Hebrew God of the Bible is not the bull god, and he is not Moloch nor Baal. And I also made another one called that the Hebrew God of the Bible did not enjoy human sacrifice. So people are looking at this incorrectly because they are not taking in the context of what it's saying. So they were punished, and let's take a look at history to see if they were punished. Okay, so we go through time, and if you look at the kings of Israel, you will find out that they were destroyed. They were destroyed in real history by the Assyrian king Shalmaneser V. Out of all those times they were destroying their children in the fire to Moloch, which is a god called Anamelech, which is Anu. Okay, Anu is the father of Enlil. They call him Anamelech, and or Adramelech, and they were not supposed to be worshiping these deities, and they would use the statue, which was an idol called Moloch, this king statue Moloch, to burn their children in the fire to Moloch. And they would worship the son of Anu, which was Enlil, and they would worship Baal Hadad, and they would worship Inanna. Now, when you're relating these beings to these planets, this comes later on in time where you'll start seeing the Greeks start incorporating some of the ancient tales, but also distorting the tales into their own creation epic. And so a lot of people will correlate Cronus of the Greeks, which is father time, into the same Cronus of the Titan, father of Zeus, as if they're the same being, instead of recognizing that the story of Cronus is not Cronus. There's two different Cronuses, and you don't meld them together as one like the Greeks did, because the two stories are completely different. You have Cronus with Ananke, which was like the serpent tale of the ancient Babylonian tale of the creation of the Apsu and the Tiamat, where they ended up creating the waters, and then out of the waters they ended up creating the world and the universe and all that. That's not the story of Cronus the Titan that they're relating to Saturn, because Saturn wasn't the universe before it became a planet. Okay, I don't know why they're trying to get all this stuff in there and just throw anything and everything in there, but they are not going to get the correct analogies of these gods in the Greek tales. But anyway, so Father Time is not Cronus, and this is throughout all these people's writings. And then they try to throw in all these gods, and then some people will be like, oh, they're fallen angels, and it's just really sad to see how confused people are about what's going on, because they don't know. They don't know that God of the Hebrews wasn't any of those things. He wasn't a sun, he wasn't a star, he wasn't a planet, he wasn't any of those things. But they tried to equate him as those things, and it's not that way. And you don't have to be religious to see that. All you have to do is have understanding and comprehension to understand that that's not who he was. That's why they were punished. So to get back to Israel being destroyed by Shalmaneser V, the Assyrian king, that is true, because Hoshea was destroyed in 724 BC, between 724 722 respectively, with Shalmaneser V. And it did happen with how they may have written it religiously because they believed that they were being punished by God, but Israel did fall off the map. And the only tribe that was left was Judah. And it says in the Bible that the only tribe that was left was Judah. So anyway, so the Israelites were destroyed in real history. You will see if you look, they actually fell off the map. You cannot find them. So they were destroyed by the Assyrian king, Shalmaneser V. And so they wrote about it. This is what people aren't understanding, is that the Hebrew Bible is for the Hebrews. It's for the Jews. It's for them. The Catholics and the Constantine and made this new religion and incorporated the Hebrew Bible, which is a completely different religion. And everybody has to remember this. What their book says in the Tanakh does not say what it says in the redacted version of their book in the Old Testament in the Christian Bible, the Protestant Bible. People think that when they're reading the Christian Bible, which has the New Testament and the Old Testament, that they're actually getting the whole thing of what the Jewish Bible says. They are not getting what the Jewish Bible says, because the Jewish Bible doesn't say everything that the Christian Bible says. So in any event, they're trying to link Jesus to this God, which they're calling Saturn, which is El, and they try to bring El into it and all this other stuff, which they were punished for, and Israel was wiped out. And if you look at in history, you'll see that it states that Israelite was going to be punished by God, and that he was going to destroy them and throw him out of his sight. And then the reason why Judah was left is because he had made a promise to them with a covenant. But then it said that Judah even started to follow after these other gods, and that he was going to punish them for it. So what happened was, and this happened in history, that they were taken out by Nebuchadnezzar later. And you have to realize that Israel was wiped off the map, and there were no more kings over Israel at all in 722 and 724 BC. And that's important to realize. And then you get 140, 150 years later, Judah is being taken into captivity because of their downfall and what they were doing with their kings. And I've talked about Hosea coming in and destroying and smashing the idols and all this other stuff. I've talked about Jehoiakim and what was happening. And the reason why I'm doing that is because the stories that are being portrayed on YouTube and all this stuff is not history. I mean, they may show certain references to some things, but it's not the true history of what's going on. And I just want people to understand that the God of the Bible is not Saturn, and the God of the New Testament has nothing to do with the Hebrews God either. So Jesus has nothing to do with the Hebrews God, and yet the Christians say that Jesus is the son of the Hebrews God, yet the people with the Saturn and Illuminati theory are saying that he's Satan, and then you have Jesus at that instance would be the son of Satan, which brings you to this. This is how crazy and twisted all this crap is, because nobody is understanding anything about any of the ancient history. And then you'll get the people in the numbers. You get the people in the numbers that start looking at the 369, and this is the Saturn theory. And then you get the people with the looking at the numbers as if, what are these numbers actually telling you? What do these numbers say to you? And they start looking at Venus, which is equated as Lucifer, and this has to do with ancient texts. And I put this video out called The Creation of the Pentagram, and it had to do with the cycles of Venus that had to do with the goddess Inanna. And they ended up following the path of the pentagram, or the path of Venus, which ended up going into 5 cycles, and it made a pentagram. And so later on in time, they put the circle of the cycle of Venus around it. And yes, the ancients had mathematics, and they had a sexagesimal system of 6. And they would go in increments of 6 and 60. So you end up getting 18 and 9, and the division of 2 is 3, and all this other stuff. But this is what these people are into, and they think that they're learning something when it's all clear as day that Venus, which is called Inanna, would be equated as Lucifer, because she ended up being called the bright and morning star, which had to do with Athena and Aphrodite's, and it had to do with the cycles of Venus. And even though the Greeks knew that this was one god, they ended up incorporating the morning and evening star as Athena, the warrior goddess, and then you have Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And they took this after the goddess Ishtar, which was the goddess of war, and she was also a promiscuous goddess, and ended up having the sex cults. And this is why the Israelites were punished, because they worshipped her too. And she has gone by several names, but just in different language, which was Ishtar, and which is Easter or Esther, and all this other stuff. I mean, I can go on and on and on about this stuff. So I think what needs to be done is that, since everybody loves using the Greeks as if the Greek mythology is something grand, but I'm gonna have to make a video when I have the time. I haven't made a video for a while because I had a tragedy in my life, and I haven't been on for a couple months. I haven't really been able to think because of it, but I just thought I'd put this out because I just want people to understand that you have to continue reading the context of what is written in the Old Testament to understand what this culture was talking about with their God, okay? And yes, they disobeyed their Lord, who they made a covenant with, by worshiping El, by worshiping Baal. And Baal is not Marduk, because I keep seeing people saying Baal is Marduk, and they think that he's all the same God, yet you aren't going to find him in these places except for as the Lord of the universe and stuff like that. You aren't going to find him as an evil God like these people are trying to say. But who they are seeing is they are seeing Enlil. But the problem is you can't bring in the ideology of a different culture with the ideology of an ancient, more ancient culture, and what it was really all about back then. You can't try to bring in different ideologies into different cultures to make it what you want it to be, because then that's where you're going to get your demonization, just like Christians, demonize people who don't believe, or the people that believe that are Islamic might not agree with the Christians or the Jews, and some of them cannot stand them at all, and they demonize them. And then you have the Jews that don't believe in Jesus or this other stuff. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, because these are different cultures. So you can't look at the Babylonian gods in the same outlook of their religion with the same religion of Christianity, because you aren't going to understand if you're doing it like that. You have to be outside of dogma when you look at it, so you can understand what's going on in each religion. So these ancient Anunnaki gods that have come through time, though, you have to understand, like I said, the cultures of each religion. Anyway, I'm going to try to make a video, and I'm going to hopefully be able to have time to make a video on how certain things don't happen. I'm not going to give it away. I'll just have to put it out. But anyway, I hope you all are having a good day, and I'm wishing you a great weekend. This is NQ35.